We finished our discussion where we outlined kind of the parameters of what a responsible brand is, and now we're going to talk about some of the things a company needs to think about when getting started with brand responsibility. So the first thing I want to talk about is this notion of efficacy and self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is an individual's belief in their own innate ability to achieve goals. And ideas of self-efficacy determine whether an individual will be able to exhibit coping behavior and how long-term efforts will be sustained when they face obstacles. Many stories that we see in brand messages serve to help us increase our own self efficacy to solve problems, often with the help of a brand. Deb Morrison and I did a study where we expanded on this idea of self efficacy and looked at the notion of industry efficacy, particularly in the advertising industry. Industry efficacy is the perception of the people in the industry, such as the perceptions of people in advertising, as to whether they can address problems. And we wanted to see if there was industry efficacy around the idea of climate change. And we found, yes, there was. Three-fourths of ad industry leaders saw climate change as a serious problem, and they also perceived fairly high levels of their ability to address climate change issues personally, as well as the ability of the advertising industry to address issues. And these leaders that we talked to suggested that the education of clients and consumers and agency personnel is able to encourage courageous messaging around climate change, and it can also build stronger relationships among those three groups of people. So industry efficacy is really an important concept. There are a couple ways that I want to talk about building efficacy, and one is looking at whether the brand and the agency and the company is an ally or an advocate. Brands face a couple of challenges when they are deciding to become more responsible. First of all, there's this idea of clutter. Many brands are already engaged with causes, so often this connection with social good isn't anything new to consumers. Um, Also, it's when a lot of brands think about causes, they default to a CSR, corporate social responsibility model, or a cause related marketing model, which is donations to charities or advocacy groups. And that's a pretty limited way to think about a type of brand action, because it's basically a brand gives time or money or products and services to a group. And that's really only one type of action that is going to certainly help the charity that they donate to, but not necessarily advance the issue directly. And often, when a brand is selecting a cause or a charity to connect to, they consider something called brand cause fit. So if you're Kellogg's, it would make sense for you to be part of an agricultural water challenge because you are getting crops from agriculture in order to grow your food. It might not be a good fit for a brand like, I'm trying to think of a brand that doesn't use agricultural products. It might be less of a connection with a fashion retailer, even though many fabrics are made from agricultural products. Many fabrics are also made from petroleum products. So it might not be as strong as a fit for a fashion brand than for a food brand. Instead of thinking about brand cause fit, a different way to think about it is whether you're an ally or an advocate. This moves beyond this notion of fit with a charity to fit more with social issues, and I think it can be more compelling to people. Here are some key definitions of the difference between allies and advocates. Allies are members of a dominant social group that bring attention to important social issues. And companies and brands can serve as allies when they increase awareness about issues that affect marginalized groups among the larger population. So that's the strength of allies. Advocates take a more proactive role, and they are working to change political, social, and economic systems. So companies and brands can be advocates when they create campaigns to promote institutional change and also to provide financial support for groups engaged in creating social change. So the advocacy model is somewhat similar to the model we saw in the previous slide with a company giving money to a charity, but instead an advocate is really being much more on the ground, boots on the ground to cause to move social change forward. And both of these groups are really important. You need allies to make other people in a dominant social group aware that an issue is important, and you need advocates to work to change systemic issues. So a brand can be both, and a brand might use messaging to talk about their allyship and maybe not their advocacy work. These to talk about both in a single message can be somewhat complex, but often on a brand's website they talk about both their allyship and their advocacy. Another way that a company or a brand can start to build some industry efficacy is by the way they set up the corporation. This image has a bunch of different initials that stand for different things. A C Corp is, if we ever see a company that has said it's Inc., Google Inc., it's a C corporation that's a for profit business that has a requirement to have a board of directors, and they focus on profit. Their mission is uh, dedicated to shareholder profit. An LLC is a limited liability corporation, and that is somewhat has a somewhat different structure regarding who has liability in case something goes bad with the company, and it keeps the liability away from the person who started the company. So it's a different structure that, again, is a way to communicate what is important to the business. And then a nonprofit, um, we know that it doesn't have a specific goal of turning a profit to stakeholders. It has a mission as a goal and no expectation of profit. LLP, LP, and S Corp are smaller versions of C Corps. So these are all kind of focused around a purpose that either is profit based or nonprofit based. And the question is, can we have something that blends both? A benefit corporation is an incorporating structure like a C Corp or an LLC that provides legal and financial protection. The biggest difference with a benefit corporation is that it considers the impact of its business decisions on all stakeholders, not just people who own shares in the company. And it has a part of its incorporation is to create a positive impact on society. Right now, there are 31 states that allow companies to register as benefit corporations. Basically, all you have to do is apply to be a benefit corporation and pay a small fee. It gives greater legal protection to a brand that has a mission because the brand can make decisions consistent with the social mission, even if that undermines profits. And that's a big difference between a benefit corporation and a traditional C corporation. If the CEO of a C corporation wanted to take profits and apply it to a social mission, the board of directors could say no, and they could even remove that person from their position as CEO. And then a certified B Corp is a different type of thing. It's a certification. It's not a way to incorporate a business, but instead it's a certification such as an LEED certification for green buildings or the fair trade labels for food products that were sourced sustainably. You don't need to be a benefit corporation to get the certification, and it doesn't replace a corporate structure. But what you have to do is fill out a very huge application form from a company called B Labs, which evaluates all applicants through their assessment, and they look at you on, they look at the brand on how well it's performing from a social good perspective, their accountability, their transparency, and it really focuses on the environmental performance of a brand. Companies have to be recertified every 2 years, and it's quite expensive. It's based on the income of the company, but and so it can range from a couple $1,000s to up to $150,000. And there are lots of benefits to B Corporation. It's part of an international movement that's gaining steam. There are 32 countries around the world where certified B Corp companies network and work together. These companies who have the certification really support one another. So if you are a cookie company and you want to, and you're getting resources from other companies, you're buying supplies from other companies, you often will choose to first see if there's a B Corp certified raw sugar company that you can buy from in order to source your ingredients. So there's this really close connection among people who have this certification. So you've got a lot of readings from these about B Corp certification. That'll give you a little bit more information. It's not well known, which is an interesting challenge. What do they need to do to get more well known? And we also have a student who did her final project on agencies being a certified B Corp. So that one might be an interesting one for you to read as well.